Royal life is often surrounded by mystery, but recent revelations have shed new light on the private world of one well-known figure. Behind the public image lies a complex personal life filled with secrets and controversies. As more details surface, we gain a deeper understanding of the events that have shaped this royal's reputation, revealing untold stories that were once carefully hidden from the public. Ready to uncover what's been happening behind closed doors? Here are the unknown things that have come out about Prince Andrew's private life. Andrew has always been the Queen's favorite child. Although it may be difficult to believe today, Prince Andrew was reportedly the Queen's favorite child for a significant portion of his youth. Someone in Elizabeth II's position should be above the temptation to show partiality. Considering that Prince Charles is the heir apparent, you may also assume he would get the part if she did. Reports, however, state that the Queen has always slightly preferred Andrew. That seems related to the fact that she gave birth to him when she had more time to become a mother. Conversely, Charles was primarily raised by nannies, since his mother was too preoccupied with her other responsibilities. This indicates that Andrew's upbringing was likely superior to his elder brother's. The prince was allegedly quite a stubborn, rude, and aggressive child. Regretfully, Andrew seemed to have more freedom than any other family member because of how well-liked he was by the Queen. Nigel Cawthorne writes in his biography, Prince Andrew, The End of the Monarchy and Epstein, that the servants found him a handful and that he was indulged at every turn. Because of how obstinate and irrational the young Andrew could be, the prince's nanny allegedly called him Baby Grumbling. It was said that he had no fear of losing his cool. The book claims that the boy's parents sometimes had problems with his conduct. Cawthorne described the event in which Andrew was said to have commented against the common people while watching a TV program with his family. It seems that Philip took offense at this remark. Andrew's issues reportedly extended to the various schools he attended. It seems that Andrew also posed a threat outside of the house. Nigel says the prince made a name for himself as a bully when he started prep school at 8. It seems his classmates weren't the young royal's greatest admirers, and they weren't the only ones either. According to Cawthorne, the instructors didn't seem to think much of Andrew either, and they weren't upset when he departed. Similar problems surfaced during his time at Gordonston boarding school, when it was said that he enjoyed delivering crude jokes and was boastful. He supposedly got the moniker the Sniggerer as a result. The prince wasn't the most academically talented kid there, which only exacerbated the situation. He was allegedly rude to a lot of palace staff and was only charming to one kind of person. The way Andrew was allegedly acting wasn't very regal, but he was still a youngster, and there was every reason to think that he would become more mature as he grew older. Sadly, that isn't said to have occurred in this case. It appears that the prince only became more of a bother as he grew older, and many royal staff members were apparently unimpressed with him. Former bodyguard Ken Worf reportedly informed Cawthorne that Andrew's manners are just awful. Another person described him as incredibly rude, and that he was exclusively attracted to blondes with big breasts. According to reports, the prince would use inappropriate language for a monarchy while tossing objects to the ground and demanding that people clean them up. It seems that being employed by this prince was not the ideal position. His relationship with Koo Stark became scandalous thanks to her role in Emily. When Andrew first started, he appeared to know how to woo women. Although not all of his relationships brought him a lot of good press, he had little problem finding a partner. An outstanding illustration of this is his romantic relationship with actress Koo Stark. The two immediately struck it off when he went on a blind date with her in 1981. However, when news of one of Koo's previous jobs gained widespread notice the following year, calamity struck. Stark may have appeared in the 1976 historical drama film Emily, where the actress was seen kissing a different lady while wearing her birthday suit. This caused instant controversy, and the media relentlessly harassed the couple until they parted ways. He attacked journalists with a paint sprayer while in Southern California. Members of the royal family have to adjust to dealing with the media. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have fought back lately because it's not always easy. Nonetheless, the monarchy and the press worked to maintain their mutually advantageous connection. Regretfully, when individuals turn against you and seek revenge, as Andrew did in the middle of the 1980s, it may be challenging to accomplish that. The prince apparently discovered a paint sprayer while visiting Southern California and used it on the journalists following him. According to reports, one of the parties was more offended by Andrew's joy at his actions than by the deed itself. In the end, the prince was forced to pay the repair price. Andrew only spent 40 days a year with his wife because of other commitments. While Andrew and Kustark's romance may not have ended in marriage, the same cannot be said of Andrew and Sarah Ferguson's connection. In 1986, the couple wed in front of 500 million people in a ceremony. Although their love was well liked, it wasn't meant to last. Andrew's return to duty in the British Navy, barely 2 weeks after the wedding, appears to have immediately sent things off to a terrible start. The pair didn't spend much time together throughout their marriage due to his military duty. Harper's Bazaar claims they were together for around 40 days a year. Maybe it's not surprising that everything went apart so rapidly. He was absent for her first pregnancy, and Sarah was told to get a grip. It made sense that Sarah was concerned about her limited time with her spouse. She knew he had obligations, but if he was never going to be around, what good was it to marry her? After Ferguson became pregnant with Princess Beatrice, things changed dramatically since Andrew was said to have been missing until the baby was born. Sarah did not have her spouse by her side throughout those trying months of pregnancy. The prince departed again after 10 days and returned after Beatrice arrived. His wife sobbed as he left, and Harper's Bazaar revealed what transpired next. Sarah is said to have felt more alone than ever after being encouraged to grow up and get a grip by staff at Buckingham Palace. Andrew clashed with Meatloaf after Sarah paid the singer some attention. Given the short amount of time Sarah spent with Andrew, it may not be difficult to see her as a lady in need of love. It's possible that she was open to finding solace in the arms of anybody who offered her some compassion, even the late musician Meatloaf. Ferguson reportedly paid attention to the rock star, although the two never had a romance. She wasn't flirting, he told The Guardian, but her actions were enough to annoy her spouse. Meatloaf thought the prince became envious because he approached the guy and attempted to shove him aside. When he tried to repay the favor, Andrew allegedly said, "You can't touch me," which led to a fight. "I am a regal one." Luckily, no one was harmed in the disturbance. He and Sarah divorced after photos of her with another man were published in the media. Sarah reached her breaking point since Andrew was barely ever in the picture. She said in My Story that she decided to live apart from her spouse in 1992, even though she didn't plan to file for divorce. She did not want their marriage utterly destroyed by one difficult period. But Sarah was unable to handle the way things were going. Unfortunately, when shocking images of the Duchess surfaced in the Daily Mirror, divorce finally became necessary. The photos showed Sarah in a risky situation with billionaire John Bryan as he nibbled on her toes. Ferguson and her husband were very embarrassed by the occurrence. Consequently, their divorce was finalized in 1996. Despite the scandal, she and Andrew have maintained their friendship over the last several decades. The divorce was reportedly influenced by things other than Sarah's toe-sucking scandal. After the incident with Bryan, it seemed inevitable that they would be divorced. That does not, however, imply that Sarah agreed to the formal separation. It appears that other factors, such as her need to work, contributed to the divorce. It was thought that Sarah should not have pursued a job to gain notoriety as a royal family member. Thus, she could begin earning a living without further embarrassing the family by getting divorced. Although it wasn't the best scenario, it was the correct decision, considering how much Sarah and Andrew's reputation had already suffered. Maybe now that she's gone, the prince can begin to build better rapport with the public. However, on the other hand, he allegedly shouted at a maid because she once failed to close the curtains fully. Now that Sarah was not involved, Andrew was more dependent on his employees than before. Regretfully, it was said that his actions had not altered after he joined the Navy and started dating Sarah. His former maid, Charlotte Briggs, spoke about her experience working for the guy after his divorce with the Sun. A few of her tales provide a less than flattering picture of the prince, such as claims that he became pretty combative over a set of drapes. She allegedly left a space due to their weight when he urged her to close them. Briggs was said to have been moved to tears by the subsequent yelling after Andrew realized his error. This reaction made the maid want to avoid dealing with the prince, so she hid whenever he was around. Andrew also gets unhappy if his stuffed toy collection isn't perfectly arranged. The prince is said to become enraged by more than just slightly open curtains. He also seems prone to losing his temper if his collection of plush toys isn't organized. The New York Post reports that he has 72 teddy bears, all of which must be put precisely with the tiniest animals in front and the giant bears at the rear. Andrew seems to be so determined that everything is in its proper place that he has laminated instructions that the maids must strictly adhere to. They supposedly provide instructions on arranging the stuffed animals after washing and handling them throughout that process. Briggs remembered going through a peculiar one-day training session on this. He stubbornly refused to move his belongings that he put in the wrong bathroom. Not all maids have had negative encounters with princes, just like Charlotte. Another person who seems to have had cause to worry about Andrew's past actions was Janet McGowan. He misplaced his toiletry bag in the incorrect bathroom in the late 1990s, which is the episode that she remembers the most. Andrew supposedly became obstinate and refused to transfer his possessions after learning that the bathroom belonged to Charles. The Daily Mail claims that Andrew didn't follow instructions until the Queen got involved. Janet described the exchange as a bizarre standoff and said Charles was unquestionably the adult. Furthermore, there didn't seem to be any difference between the two restrooms. Andrew has a habit of wooing women by letting them sit on the Queen's throne. The royal throne represents the Queen's authority in a monarchy. The Daily Beast claims it's also a way to assist Andrew in finding a partner. According to rumors, the prince has a habit of seating his potential conquests on the throne to win them over. According to a source, he allegedly does it for everyone he wants to impress, including the former supermodel Caprice Bore. She told The Sun that Andrew had brought her to Buckingham Palace many times, and that the prince had let her on the throne on one of those visits. This occurred in 2000, a few years after his and Sarah's divorce. Even though they never really had a relationship, Caprice was reportedly thoroughly entertained. He gained the nickname Air Miles Andy because of his frequent use of air travel. Because he was well liked by the public, Andrew seemed to be able to get away with things when he was younger, but his reputation hasn't exactly been the same since the divorce. The fact that his dubious actions, including his penchant for extravagant spending, have received more attention in the media hasn't helped. According to reports, the prince isn't scared to part with his money, particularly on trips. Andrew's penchant for taking flights whenever possible, even when they are not required, led the media giving him the moniker Air Miles Andy. For example, he once supposedly requested a helicopter to carry him to Oxford. On other occasions, Andrew had to rely on RAF planes to get him to Northern Ireland and Scotland to play golf. His frequent flying has racked up quite the bill over the years. The expense of some of Andrew's travels is enough to make many UK taxpayers' blood boil. His flights cost a total of £325,000, about $435,000, in 2003 alone. 5 years later, he paid $177,000 for a private jet ticket to the United States, a decision inevitably met with harsh criticism. The prince has always been passionate about flying, and in 2014, he accumulated many air miles. It seems Andrew went the equivalent of 3 times around the Earth. This is true even if he is now no longer the British government's ambassador for international commerce. Andrew appears unable to resist getting on a plane and doesn't seem to care whose money he must spend to do so. Sarah caused a scandal when she tried to use her connection to Andrew for monetary gain. Even though Sarah was no longer Andrew's spouse after 1996, she remained a vital part of his life. Sadly, the prince had to pay a price for it in 2010 when his relationship with her sparked another controversy. Ferguson had no money. so she promised someone that she would get him in touch with Andrew for a significant sum. The prince was the international trade envoy then, so the transaction was very valuable. Sarah was chatting to a guy who was an undercover reporter, but she was unaware of this. He secretly taped their chat and shared it, making the Duchess issue an apology for the controversy. Sarah insisted that her ex had nothing to do with it. Andrew has invited some questionable guests to some of his daughter's birthday parties. It is common for well-known individuals to attend events hosted by members of the royal family. Sadly, that's not necessarily a positive thing. A few of Andrew's guests seem somewhat dubious, especially regarding his kids' birthday celebrations. For example, the embittered co-founder of Miramax, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell were among the attendees at Beatrice's 18th birthday celebration. They were arrested for improper conduct after the incident in 2016, and their misdeeds have resulted in significant jail terms. A few years later, Tarek Khaitouni was again the subject of controversy as a party attendee. The weapons smuggler even had a present for the princess, which Andrew is said to have accepted. He was accused of using an offensive word back in 2012 while talking to a political aide. Being a public figure and using the incorrect word may significantly affect your reputation. People must be cautious about what they say, since specific terms formerly considered acceptable are now frowned upon. When someone said that Andrew used a derogatory epithet while chatting with a political assistant, Andrew learned about it. Though news of the event didn't surface until 2019, it was said to have happened in 2012. The prince allegedly said it to Rowan Silva, who was claimed to have used an extremely antiquated term. Denying any such incident by Buckingham Palace seems to have allowed Andrew to escape it. That being said, it's likely because, at the time, he was dealing with considerably more severe claims. The prince caused significant damage after ramming through a set of gates in 2016. It may have taken years for accusations about Andrew's use of derogatory language to surface, but the same cannot be accurate for an event in 2016. This time, it seems the prince broke through Windsor Great Park's gates when they refused to open for him. The sensors detect when a vehicle is close and appeared to be malfunctioning. Andrew could have avoided the fence by driving an additional mile, but he chose to ram through it. His truck and the gates were damaged in the incident, which caused much controversy among the British people. People insisted that because he was a regular citizen in his job, he should face charges for dangerous driving and criminal damage. Andrew appeared to throw shade at Harry and Meghan before Eugenie's big day. Andrew and his daughters have significant authority over ordinary citizens since they are royal family members. However, since the prince isn't the eldest of the Queen's children, people often prefer Charles's family over the prince's. This may have strained Andrew's relationship, which explains why he seemed to make a mocking comment about Harry and Meghan's nuptials before Eugenie was married. He remarked that the ceremony would not be the same because there would be more visitors. He replied, "They need a church that size to fit all in because they have so many friends." Some online see this as Andrew implying that his wife and nephew aren't as loved. He had some questionable alleged friendships over the years. Of course, the quality of your friends matters more than their number. If none of the people you surround yourself with would support you in times of need, there's no use in having hundreds of acquaintances. Regretfully, Andrew hasn't always had the finest reputation regarding friendships. He's said to have had some dubious ties in the past, one of which included a previous ruler of Libya. He met with the individual in 2008 and presented a lecture for the man's Africa investment portfolio at St. James Palace. Just a few years had passed since rebel militants killed him in 2011. There is also a reported association with British businessman David Rowland, who gained notoriety as a tax exile. His friendship with Jeffrey Epstein damaged his reputation significantly. Andrew's past of hanging around with dubious individuals hasn't helped his image. However, none has damaged his reputation more than his association with Jeffrey Epstein. The guy allegedly killed himself in 2019 after his arrest for women trafficking and abuse. He had already been taken into custody in the 2000s, although it was unclear how serious his offenses had been at the time. After a thoroughgoing investigation revealed what he had done, concerns about Epstein's associates started to surface. Having been acquainted with the financiers since before his initial incarceration, Andrew became one of them. Some individuals questioned whether the prince was aware of or complicit in Epstein's conduct right away. A woman came forward and accused Andrew of inappropriate behavior 3 times. It wasn't long until those who doubted Andrew's innocence had cause to do so. Virginia Jofra came out in October 2019 to accuse the prince of misbehaving. She said she had had 3 personal encounters with Andrew, the first supposedly in 2001 in London. Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly instructed Virginia, then 17 years old, to perform for Andrew what she had done for Jeffrey. According to reports, this is why she, Andrew, and his pals went to a nightclub where she eventually became personal with the prince. The other assault instances reportedly took place on Epstein's private island and in New York, where she was compelled to comply with Andrew's request, reportedly out of fear and intimidation. Andrew vehemently denied the accusations and claimed there was no legitimate proof. Naturally, Andrew refuted all of Virginia's accusations against him. Even if this were a valid claim, he would not acknowledge it since it was clearly serious. Regretfully, his membership in the royal family meant that only claiming his innocence would not be enough to end it. Many were reluctant to trust him over Jofra because of his contentious past, particularly in light of the growing Me Too movement. To justify himself, the prince claimed he had never met Virginia. He attempted to argue that the picture, which showed the 2 of them together, may have been altered. In the end, Andrew agreed to an interview to clear his record, but it didn't work out well. The interview, designed to clear his name, only made Andrew's situation worse. The royal family doesn't usually acknowledge scandals in public, but this time they were unable to keep silent. In November 2019, Andrew was granted permission to participate in an interview with BBC Newsnight. Unfortunately, many viewers were not persuaded of his innocence by what he had to say. The prince said in the interview that because he was at Pizza Express with his family the first night, he couldn't have attacked Virginia. The claim that Andrew couldn't sweat because he had too much adrenaline while fighting in the Falklands War was another line of defense. And if all of this wasn't enough, he continued by saying that he didn't regret being friends with Epstein and that he had never shown the billionaire any specific sympathy for his victims. The interview was a car crash, as some would say. He stepped back from royal duties after the interview. The interview with the BBC made it very unlikely for Andrew to escape these accusations unharmed. It was revealed shortly after the controversial interview that the prince would leave his royal position. He said that he unequivocally regretted his friendship with Epstein, and he decided to distance himself in the hopes of sparing the king more embarrassment. Andrew said he would take a, for the foreseeable future, hiatus, most likely to come back when the controversy subsided. That being said, this would not go away in a few months. Despite the turmoil surrounding Meghan and Harry's breakup a few months later, Andrew's alleged assaults continued to get public attention. The prince's situation then worsened much more. The FBI claimed that Andrew wasn't cooperating with their Epstein investigation. Many people had a challenging year in 2020, but amid all the worries about his health, Andrew faced another challenge. The FBI was not getting the most out of him regarding his cooperation in the Epstein probe. That is, at least, what the Times claims. Since his car crash interview, the prince has been the target of contact attempts by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. However, U.S. prosecutor Jeffrey Berman said Andrew had provided zero cooperation throughout that period. With a rapid denial, the prince's staff noted that nothing could be further from the truth. They told Andrew he couldn't assist them since the FBI hadn't even contacted him. However, not everyone accepted this account of what happened. In August 2021, Virginia filed a lawsuit against the prince for assault and battery. Luckily for them, the problem with the ski chalet has been fixed. In December 2021, Ruve allegedly dropped her case and informed Mail Online that the debt had been settled. The couple was selling the chalet to pay off their debt and give Andrew more cash in the bank, which he would need for his second litigation. Virginia decided to take the prince to court before the situation with Isabel was resolved. She accused him of beating and assaulting her when she was 17 and filed a civil suit against him in New York in August of 2021. Typically, because her case's statute of limitations had passed, this would not be feasible. Nevertheless, she was able to pursue the complaint because of the state's Child Victims Act. The Met decided not to take further action against Andrew after conducting a review. Following that interview in November 2019, Andrew had wished for the Virginian accusations to vanish. She was now suing, however, so there was no way they would go anywhere. The prince seemed to be headed straight toward destruction. He did, however, have things work out in his favor when the Met said he would not be prosecuting him. The Metropolitan Police investigated Andrew when Jofra made her charges. However, they revealed in October 2021 that they saw no need to explore the prince further than they had done. According to a person close to Andrew, according to PA Media, the Met's decision was expected, as he has always maintained his innocence. Andrew and Sarah were sued for not fully paying for a ski chalet they bought in 2014. As if that weren't enough, Isabel de Rouve filed a lawsuit against the prince, claiming that he and Sarah owed her £6.7 million, or around $8.96 million. The couple's Swiss ski chalet, which Rouve allegedly sold them in 2014, was purportedly the source of the debt. Most of the cost was allegedly paid for by a mortgage, with the remaining balance to be paid in cash. It was said that Sarah and Andrew would each pay half, but none of them ever showed up with the money. Eventually, they worked with Isabel to come to an agreement that let them postpone the payment for 5 years. However, the French socialite initiated the case when they still had not paid up. He lost his military affiliations and royal patronages at the start of 2022. The prince was still under investigation even if the Metropolitan Police had given up on Andrew. The man's reputation has suffered further setbacks in the months after Virginia's lawsuit. According to information released by Buckingham Palace, his military affiliations and royal patronages will end at the beginning of 2022. He will no longer be addressed as HRH, an honor Prince Harry forfeited upon his abdication from the throne. Additionally, the palace disclosed that Andrew will be defending this case as a private citizen, which implies that his status cannot refute the accusations as a member of the royal family. The monarchy most likely wants to distance itself from the prince in light of all that has transpired in the previous several years. Andrew deleted and privatized some of his social media accounts in early 2022. It is rare for the royal family to spend entire days on social media. The various monarchs do, however, have a presence on these platforms, which they use to garner popular support. Well, most of them do. Andrew seems to be avoiding social media since one of his accounts was deactivated a few days after losing his title. It seems that another has been locked. Thus, access to it requires approval from a follower. It makes sense that Andrew would want to avoid reading what others are saying about him online, given all that is going on. However, deleting and privatizing many accounts is hardly subtle, so some ask whether these acts are essential. A judge denied Andrew's request to throw out the lawsuit. After the accusations against him were made over 2 years ago, Andrew's situation is not good. A court denied the prince's attempt to overturn the case at the beginning of 2022, which was another problem. Jofra had allegedly made a deal in 2009 not to sue anybody else. Thus, his team thought the case ought to be dismissed. But it doesn't seem like Andrew's name was on that contract. Furthermore, the court disagrees with the prince's attorney's assertion that the accusations lack credibility. As things stand, the trial will probably begin before the end of 2022, and it has the potential to make or break one of the most divisive members of the royal family in history.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon